Once you get to that point in your life where you allow everything to be exactly what it is, will be the moment that everything that you desire will come into your life. When you stop forcing things, when you stop going against the grain and allow things to happen more organically in your life, you will start to see how the blessings come in abundance. Because what happens so many times for a lot of us is we get to this point where we may be afraid of what will happen if we take our hand off certain things, or what will happen if we stop caring or we stop putting in, so much effort to try to force a result, that we forget that the best things sometimes happen more naturally when you stop trying to force it, when you just do what you can do, your effort, your energy, without trying to force everything that you have going on. And the first thing that I want to dive into is the law of detachment. And what the law of detachment says is that to achieve anything or to acquire anything, you must give up your outcome to that thing. It doesn't mean giving up your goals. It just means letting go of that need or that desperation for them. Just take a moment to think about any relationship that you may have been in where you tried to force, or you're so desperate to get a person to act a certain way, and ask yourself, did that play out how you wanted it to play out? But majority of the times, the relationships where we didn't really care too much, or we didn't try to force certain things and we allowed them to happen more organically, was when they played out how we didn't really imagine them to play out. This just shows the power in the law of detachment, you being able to not be so fixated on the outcome that you just allow things to be what they are and flow more organically. The hard part about this is just having that trust, having that faith that things will play out exactly how they're supposed to. But you just have to understand that God does not make no mistakes. And no matter where you end up, that is exactly where you're supposed to be. But oftentimes we can put ourselves in this position where we get off course because we try to do things according to our plan and according to our logic. But in reality, that's just not how it should work. Really take the time to allow everything to be. Stop resisting what is, because what you may not realize is that resisting creates tension. It creates this form of suffering that later in life we have to learn how to overcome and get through. When you take the time to allow your thoughts, your emotions, and situations that you may be in to exist without you immediately reacting or judging, this really just opens the door for things to play out exactly how they're supposed to play out. And I feel like so many times what we don't realize is this form of attachment is nothing more than control. Us trying to shift and mold our lives into this image that we've always imagined it to be. And what this attachment is usually rooted in is fear. You may be afraid for certain things to play out a certain way. You may be afraid to fail. You may just simply be afraid to not get the outcome that you feel like you may have worked really hard for. And that's okay. Majority of people feel the same way. I felt the same way. But at some point, you are going to have to loosen your grip and allow things to be exactly what they are, for them to come into your life exactly how they're supposed to be. More organically, more free-flowing, without your control, without that attachment, without you forcing the outcome. And an important question to ask yourself is, what am I trying to force right now? When you get put in a situation where you're just trying to have that sense of control over whatever it is that may be going on in your life, ask yourself, what am I trying to force? And is this energy that I'm using or this time that I'm wasting really going to get me the result that I want? Or is it still going to be left up to fate? Or is it still going to be left up to your overall destiny? Things are going to play out exactly how they're supposed to play out. Regardless of what you do, regardless of what you try to force, you can only do so much. And one of the biggest lessons that I had to learn in my life was just that sense of letting go. Letting go of feeling like I always had to be controlled, or I always have to have a sense of control over the things that were going on in my life. Yes, you do have that impact, but there's a difference from having an impact and simply just clinging on from a form of attachment and trying to control and force an outcome. And the reason behind this is simply because you need to go through certain steps before you reap the benefits of whatever it is that you're striving for. There is a legitimate process that you have to go through. A lot of us like to skip the process. We like to skip the in-between stage because it may not feel well, or it may be embarrassing to fail, or it may be, not even the best feeling to go through the ups and downs while you're striving to reach that high point in your life. But it's something that you have to go through. Do not force it. Do not force your journey, because even when you do get to that point of success, you're going to look back and reflect more on the journey than the actual end goal that you're at. Really taking into account that freedom is uncertainty. The unknown isn't the enemy, it's where all the possibilities are. The moment that we can allow ourselves to get out of our comfort zone and really dive out and do things that puts us in those uncomfortable positions will be the moment that our life changes. And this also ties into that law of detachment, because when you detach, you're uncomfortable. You're getting yourself put in the unknown where you're going to have to react and do things that may not be in your comfort zone. And that's okay. That's where all the possibilities are. That's where if you step out into that unknown, you are going to be able to change your life, both physically, mentally, whatever the case may be. And this form of detachment really lets you live with curiosity instead of fear. It really does strip away any sense of that outcome potentially not going the way that you may want it to go. And then there's this famous quote I just want to share with y'all real quick, but it's by Deepak Chopra, I think the name is. But he said that those who are certain of an outcome can afford to wait. Those who have that confidence, those who believe that, okay, I can detach, I can remove myself, they can afford to wait. Even when things don't look like they're working in their favor, even when things may look like they're getting out of control and they're getting farther and further and further away from them, they have that sense of patience because they're certain of the outcome. And you have to have this exact same mindset in terms of your life, because this is going to allow the blessings to come into your life in abundance. We need to train ourselves to detach from the how. How will things work out? What am I going to do? Because truth be told, you may not have all the answers. There's going to be a point in your life where you just simply don't know. And that's okay. You do not need to know how everything will work out. All you need to do is set intentions, take inspired action, and let go of control. And everything will play out exactly how it's supposed to play out in your life. Trust the time and trust the process. And more importantly, trust yourself. Even at times where you may not feel like it, even at times where you may lack confidence, you have to really trust yourself and trust the process, because this sense of peace that you get from trusting the process is the real power. Detachment gives you that sense of emotional clarity and mental balance that you need. You put yourself in a position to respond rather than react. You take the time to be more magnetic, you become more calm, and you be more confident overall. And not only does this affect you, this affects those that you have around you because they see this in you. It's contagious. But you can practice this sense of detachment daily by allowing yourself to take in what's going on around you. And rather than reacting, you just dissect what's going on. I do this all the time with my feelings. When I may feel something, an emotion, I don't just try to react. Initially, I take the time to think about what it is that I feel and then move accordingly. This is how you detach. But really just keep in mind that letting go does not mean that you're giving up. It just means that you're giving in to deeper trust. That you understand that your life is going to play out exactly how it's supposed to play out, regardless of what people may say, regardless of even how you may feel in this very moment. You have a destiny and you are going to get exactly where it is you're supposed to be. But take the time to ask yourself, what would you shift in your life right now if you just allowed everything to be? What things would you change? This is something that you really have to take the time to think about. And if you want, feel free to drop a comment on it, because even me personally, I had to allow myself to be free. And I first decided that when I just allowed things to be what they were, when I just stopped forcing everything that I desired started to come into my life. But if this message spoke to you in any way, shape, or form, do me a huge favor, drop a like, comment, and subscribe. Share it if you may. It's your boy Blue Jay Tay, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.